what you had and what you lost. Oh, thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Say women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. Ooh, you'll know. Oh, thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Say women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know. Oh, you
The first thing I want to do is to thank everybody who is here tonight. It's really amazing. And I know that my dad is touched. I am Tammy Elser. I'm Smoke's eldest daughter. I am here representing myself and also my sister, Vicki. And I am delighted and honored to have the opportunity to introduce a few people, make a few thank yous. And the first thank you goes to the Saint Soldiers of Our Lee. Thank you, the beautiful music. It's absolutely wonderful. It's one of several delegations from Our Lee and the Flathead Reservation that we have here in our presence, and we are so honored. Smyrna and Kathy, thank you for being here with us today. So the first thing that I wanted to share is a little bit about how this book came about through my lens, and my lens is a little bit different. And it started in many of the ways that your relationships with Smoke and Thelma began. So how many of you have a memory of going to packing class? Whoa. It's a few students. That's a few students. And my dad has memories of you, though you're going to have to share your name because that's a lot of students to remember over time. So many of you have that memory, and sometime in about 1980 or 1981, a local kid came wandering up to the barn, and he wanted to take the packing class from my dad. And his name was Matthew Hansen. And Matthew Hansen eventually took that packing class and became a wrangler for my father in 1983. Matt had a distinguished pedigree, if you will. His stepdad was Richard Hugo, and his mother was Ripley Shem Hugo. And Matt was an avid outdoorsman and an ardent supporter of the conservation of Montana public lands. And he became a wrangler for my dad in 1983. And in November of that year, he was diagnosed with cancer. And in April of that year, he passed away as a very young man. So I mention that in part because many, many, many years later, a wonderful and ardent conservationist, Eva Maria Maggi, came to my dad's barn and did the exact same thing. She learned and she fell in love and she collected the stories, and it began a partnership, if I will, that has lasted through all of these years. One thing that I need you to know that connects then Matthew Hansen's legacy to Eva and my dad's beautiful book that all of you, or some of you are lucky enough to be holding today. I know we've run out of books, but they're being printed as we speak. One thing that I do want to do is connect the dots between those two things, because early in the inception of this book, the Matthew Hansen Endowment, which is through the Wilderness Institute here at the University of Montana, funded the original transcription when Eva began. God bless you, Judson, and the kids, for letting her go for all of this time, for all of these years. When Eva began the painstaking process of collecting my dad's oral history and recording it, the Matthew Hansen Foundation provided a tiny little bit of seed money, and then later a tiny little bit of seed money that became the transcripts. And then later, as a consequence of Eva's passion, it became the book that you see today. And my gratitude really knows no bounds. So I had all you raise your hands if you took the packing class from Smoke at some point in time, right? And all of these hands went up in the air. How many of you wrangled for Smoke?
We got.
Yeah, we've got. Oh, where's Lisa?
Lisa.
Lisa. The Wranglers are unique because of their shyness. Their reticence to tell you where to go. To the bathroom and other places, right? No. So they are not, but I cannot thank you all enough, those of you who are here, and there are many that I see throughout this audience, and we're delighted. How many of you had the privilege of being a guest and then becoming a dear, dear friend? I see you. I see you. One of you was a guest who had, I think, a 6-month-old infant on her chest as she rode through the Bob Marshall, Kathy Ream, and that 6-month-old infant is Tarn, sitting right behind her. And so I want to acknowledge that this is a robust community, and a community for which I am very grateful. I spent a good part of yesterday afternoon visiting with my friend Brant Good about the experiences of his dad going in the Bob Marshall in 1969 with Smoke. So many, many years and many, many stories. And no one came as a guest leaving as a guest. And no one came as a guest really as a dude. They came as guests and they left as friends. And I need you all to know that as well. So people to thank. First, I want to thank the Matthew Hansen Endowment. And I'd like to thank the University of Montana Wilderness Institute as a consequence also of that and for their sponsorship of this event. The University Department of Political Science that Eva is a professor in, and we are deeply grateful for that and for her deft and beautiful language throughout this book. The Montana Game Warden Association, the Montana Conservation Elders, robustly represented here. Mike Korn, thank you so much. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation that also contributed to this event, the Montana Wildlife Federation, the Montana Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and the Missoula chapter of the Backcountry Horsemen. Thank you so much. I want to also thank Jessica Schaefer from Event Services, St. Soldiers from our lead, and we're just enjoying the heck out of the music tonight, so I am very, very appreciative. The Schaffner Bindery of Missoula for making a guest book for tonight, and I hope all of you will take a little bit of additional time to sign that guest book. I don't know where it is, but it will be placed here at some point in time. And I want to also thank Stella for doing this wonderful interpretation for us so that we have accessibility for everyone who is here and who might need that support. So, with that, I have one last thing to say, and it is my deepest admiration and great respect, and the respect of my entire family. Where are the grandkids? Heather, Shannon, Aaron, Andrew, David, Ava. Liv, where's Liv? Oh, there she is. I see her. So the grandkids, most of them are here tonight. We're just missing a couple. They all live right here in the valley. All of us would like to express our profound admiration and gratitude to Eva Maria Maggi for her incredible work on this text. it takes an individual of extraordinary love. Well, I'm not going to say Dad's hard to put up with. that would not be fair. But it takes a person
Where's
of
Dan?
extraordinary love and extraordinary dedication to spend, 700 hours recording and asking the probing questions that get to the depth and to the precise right story. And that is precisely what Eva has done. And we are deeply grateful. She captured my dad's voice in all of its robust and colorful language. And she captured parts of his story that I thought I knew. I would never have asked and didn't know in that precise way that she poses the question. So with that, Eva, thank you. We love you. And we are deeply grateful.
Thank you.
And I would like now to relinquish this microphone, where, of course, I've prepared no remarks. So I'll relinquish this microphone right now, and I want to pass it on to Eva.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. That's very nice and kind of you. When I first set foot in Smoke's barn 7 years ago, I felt at home, although I was 20,000 miles away from where I grew up. The old stone barn looked like the ones that I played in Germany. It smelled like familiar earth. Whoever took Smoke's packing class, and Tammy already asked, there are so many, you know that Smoke is a gifted teacher. And he likes to teach with telling a story. So when I heard my first story from him, I knew in my heart what I had to do. I became the blank page he needed to tell his stories. For hundreds of hours, we sat by the fire, and I listened. I emerged as the writer I wanted to be, but not let myself to be my whole life. I also learned how to pack a mule, expect to get stepped on, and leave my watch at the trailhead. I never actually rode a horse alongside Smoke. Who did here? Another raise of arms? I envy you. But sitting by the fire in his barn, I traveled every corner of the Bob Marshall Wilderness with him. And this book, Hush of the Land, is the fruit of this journey and the beginning of mine as a writer. I hope you enjoy it. But before I read, I want to thank some people without who this book wouldn't be what it is. And first and foremost, that's Smoke's wife, Thelma. And and Judson, my husband, who spent endless hours, both of them spend endless hours reading the manuscript and seem like they still enjoy living with us. Both impossible tasks, I think. We would not sit up here without you. My wonderful kids, Etta and Noam, my family in Germany, who can't be here tonight, but might be watching, our literary agent, Julie, you are the best and a great friend, our publisher, Bison Books, and editor Clark Whitehorn, who understood the hush of the land early on. Special thanks also to the numerous people who helped me with my research here at the archives at the Mansfield Library and across the state, and the UM's Wilderness Institute, who made this work, my work, to work on this book possible with their financial support from the Matthew Hansen Endowment. Tim Ryan of the Salish Kootenai College, who can't be here tonight, but your friendship helped me write this book, in particular the book, the chapter was one of my favorites, Smohat, the very last chapter of the book. Thank you for that. Karen and Earl Phillips for listening and giving me time to write. And Linda and George Korn, who are the best in-laws anybody could wish for, and amazing grandparents. Thanks for watching the kids. And thank you for supporting me every step of the way. But my biggest gratitude goes to Smoke. When I heard your stories, I had no choice but to ask you to record them, so everyone could travel with you one day. These stories, your stories, allowed me to find my own voice as a writer. It changed my life. But that you trusted me enough to write them up is a gift I will cherish forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now let me read. So this book is written as Smoke would tell it, so it's in first person. I will just go with what I have here. The prologue. The next turn in the trail is the door into a different world. The sky is bigger and bluer, the rocks stark and steep, the river roars with white foam. I am riding above the North Fork of the Blackfoot River at 3 miles an hour. It is a clear summer day on our first stretch of an 8-day trip through the Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana. 1.5 million acres of roadless land, home to elk, moose, lynx, wolves, and grizzly bear, in the third largest wilderness area in the country. A family from the city rides behind me. My crew, with the pack mules carrying our food and gear, follow closely behind on the narrow trail above the water. After this turn, the canyon opens up. The green is fresh, with a few mature trees, but most were burned by wildfires years ago. Though it's seemingly wild, many people have traveled this trail before us. Gold miners to find their luck, trappers to find the beaver, homesteaders to build a town, and before all of them, the Salish and Blackfeet people to reach their ancestral fishing and hunting grounds. Soon we will cross Smoke's Bridge and stop for lunch by the foundation of his old cabin right by the river, and I will tell the story of the man who once lived here, hiding from the U.S. Marshal. The guests won't ask many questions or call their horses lovingly by their names. Not yet, but tomorrow they will. And once their awe turns into love for the land, they will thank their horses each Christmas with a card and a box of carrots for bringing them here. My name is Smoke Elser, and I spent my life working as an outfitter and guide, bringing thousands of people deep into the wilderness of Montana on horses and mules. This wilderness is true wild country. Cars can't travel through because there are no roads. People can't stay in a hotel because there are no permanent structures. Since the Wilderness Act of 1964, 111 million acres have been set aside in the United States to be left untrammeled by humans. A place for animals to live, rivers to flow free, and mountains to be kept intact from drilling and mining. Keeping this land wild was a big challenge back then, as it is today. I know it, because I was there when the first wilderness areas were set aside, and I have stood up to keep it that way every day since. The Bob Marshall Wilderness has a special place in my heart. It is my spiritual home, my cathedral, and my favorite way to travel it is on a horse and with a mule. Because they carry our food and gear, we can stay longer, travel further, and connect deeper to the land around us. At 3 miles an hour and 5 feet off the ground, everybody can truly experience wilderness. The busy city people, the old and the young, even those who can't walk. Sitting on a horse, my guests have time to look around and can wonder about the 1,000-foot-high limestone cliff, the wide cone-shaped flowers sprouting from the forest floor, and the strangely familiar animals that they might spot on a meadow just across the river, but only know from pictures. Then I tell them about the sedimentary rock that lifted up thousands of years ago along the Continental Divide, the bear grass that blooms only every 7 years, and the moose that likes to feed in the marshy wetland, and they see the land around them with different eyes. Every time my guests ask about grizzly bears, and I tell them the story of when I got treated by one with a collar, or when my horse chased off another during the night. The Bob Marshall is perfect for horse travel. Its many valleys can be accessed by just a few high mountain passes. Grass for the horses and mules is plentiful, and the fishing is outstanding. To know where to camp and to provide food and shelter, that was my job. I came to Montana as a young boy from Ohio, fresh out of high school in 1955. Couldn't ride a horse or peg a mule, met the love of my life and never left. A blind man taught me to listen. A teacher turned outfitter taught me to speak up, and his cousin showed me how to pack my first mule. I met many great horses, even better mules, and had the best crew anyone could wish for, all of them both curious and smart. As an outfitter, I brought thousands of people from all walks of life into the wilderness. Bankers from New York, pioneering grizzly bear researchers, dairy farmers from Wisconsin, gas station attendants, writers, and, on a very special trip, elders from the Salish tribe. Even more, I taught a lot of students how to pack a horse or a mule in my old stone barn with the red doors, right here up the valley in Missoula, Montana. Everybody looks for something different in life, seeks fulfillment and strives, but in the woods, we all long for solitude, the quiet in our otherwise busy lives. People find peace in their connection to nature. That is why I always collect my guests' watches before we leave the trailhead. Without watches, they can let go of the time in their worlds and fully live in the slower rhythm of the land. Together we travel, and they don't have to worry about where to find food or shelter. My crew and I take care of that. At night, after dinner, around the campfire, I tell them the stories of the land that I heard, and some that happened to me. Stories bring us closer, connect us deeper to the world around us. My stories travel home with them, and my love for the Bob Marshall Wilderness becomes their love for the land. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody that came tonight. I'm going to try to tell you some new stories. Even the old Wranglers won't even recognize them. So I'm going to try to tell you some new stories. And I really appreciate what Eva has done with us just sitting in the barn, kicking a log around now and then and putting wood in the fire. And what we did is I just told stories the way I remember them. And you know, when you get 90 years old, there's a lot of stories. I mean, a lot of stories. So I could continue on forever. So, and when I see you start, anybody that gets tired of this, just wave your hand and I'll quit and you can leave. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. This is not a locked-in situation. Okay, the first story I'd like to tell you is, you know, I worked for the Whitetail Ranch. Tom Edwards owned the ranch, and I came to work for him in 1957. And I met him at the trailhead on Beaver Creek out of Lincoln, and I asked him for a job. Of course, he was busy with the pack string and everything, and he said, no, he said, you got to come up this winter and talk to me. So that winter, I went up, and I talked to Tom in 1955, or 57, excuse me. And when I talked to Tom, he said, okay, he said, the reason I wanted you to come up, and I need to talk to you for a little bit. And he says, you know, you don't know much about outfitting and packing. So he said, I'll tell you, I'll hire you for the first 2 weeks. No pay, but room and board. How's that? And I said, you bet. And from then on, I worked for Tom Edwards. And later, when Tom took in a partner, his neighbor, Howard Cope neighbor, I worked for them. And so the first story I want to tell you is a little bit about the Whitetail Ranch. It's a great ranch. It ran, you know, it started in the 30s, and it was on an old homestead that was up in there that belonged to Smoke Denu. Anyway, he started this dude ranch, and he was a teacher in Helena, taught art in particular. And in the late 30s, he decided he wanted to get into the dude ranch business and he built cabins. We had 3 or 4 cabins there. And of course, we always had to put roofs on them in the winter and whenever we had time. And that's what I did my first 2 weeks, by the way, is rake lawns, put on roofs, and scrub floors, and get the cabins all ready for the guests so that they would come in. And anyway, Tom, we had a lot of trips. One of the first trips that I went on was into the Bob Marshall, and we saw a lookout being burned, and that's in the book, and I'm not going to say much more about it. But on many trips into Meadow Creek Lake, which is the the South Fork, the East Fork, excuse me, of the North Fork of the Blackfoot. And that comes over to Meadow Creek and runs out in the Lincoln Scapegoat country. And in those days, we could set up permanent camp. So the Whitetail Ranch had a permanent camp in there that they would set up. We would set up every spring. And I remember going in the first time, I had 2 pack mule or horses. Tom didn't like mules, but Howard liked mules, and now I really like mules. But at any rate, we started in, and I had Troubles and Lonesome. There were 2 pack horses, and we had another string of horses that was with us, Roxy and a whole bunch of them. And we packed in the camp, set up camp, big kitchen area, and then 3 wall tents along the edge of the lake, and got them all cleaned up, put cots in them and everything, and got them all set up. Got the kitchen all set up with stove. In those days, we built a crib that is a square made out of logs, or poles actually, and filled with dirt, rocks in it, and filled it with whatever you could. And then on top, you put a box stove, which is a stove with no bottom. The crib is the bottom. So at any rate, we set up camp. And then we started bringing in our guests to fish. They wanted to fish Meadow Creek Lake. Great lake to fish. It is fed by springs from underneath the lake, although the creek runs a little bit of water into it also. But at any rate, we started started setting up this camp and get it all done. And then from then on, we were bringing in our guests, and lots of guests. I mean, Dr. Herman, he was a specialist at a big hotel or big hospital back east. And anyway, we brought in our guests, and every time we came by into the valley, we went over a little pass. You know, that pass is called Dead Man's Lake Pass, and it's right next to Huckleberry Pass. If you've ever been up that way, now you can drive a car right over Huckleberry Pass, but Dead Man's Lake Pass is just to the north of that, about 5 miles. Anyway, we'd go in once we passed the lake and drop down into the creek bottom, which is a big U-shaped valley made by glaciers. You go on down about another 3 miles, but before you go that far, we always stopped and we took our I took my sleeping bag out, and a lot of the other wranglers as well as myself, but usually one wrangler would stay at the end of that trail at the park there. And there was a little campground there, and camp spot there, and we'd set up a little teepee tent and have our sleeping bag. We'd unload that stuff right there. And then we'd ride on down to our main camp. And when we got to the main camp, we'd get our guests all set. We'd float out on the lake there and then start fishing. We'd eat supper with our guests and usually sit around the campfire for a little bit. Then one of us, me in particular, I would get on a horse and ride to where I left my sleeping bag and a teepee tent. And because we wanted to make sure the horses wouldn't go home. You know, once they got on that trail, they were headed for home. And they knew right where they were. They were only about 12 miles from the ranch and real easy to get home. So I'd go up there and camp overnight in Alpine Park, which is the name of the little park at the head of the creek there. And many times I'd get up there and I'd hear the bells coming and have to get up at midnight and sometimes 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and chase the horses back down the valley. And my horse, I'd have him on picket. I'd put a picket line out and put him on picket right in front of the tent where I was sleeping. And so I always had a horse in case I needed to really get after him. But most of the time I'd just jump up in my cowboy boots and white underwear and chase the mules back, and they were really scared of that white underwear. So anyway, I'd chase them all back, and anyway, every day I'd go down there and have to spend a couple of 3 hours just checking the grass and seeing where the horses might be, see where their tracks had gone, and all that stuff. And one time I drifted over towards Bugle Mountain, which is the mountain that Alpine Park is right on the edge of Bugle Mountain. And in the meantime, you know, I noticed that when I was in the main camp down at the lake, about 3 times a day, a helicopter would fly over. And I thought, boy, this is not much of a wilderness, Tom. And here it was, they were developing a mine on top of Bugle Mountain. And it was the Black Bear Mining Company, a subsidiary of Kennecott, and they were looking for silver and copper. And they would fly across every day, bringing in supplies for their little mining camp up there, which they were trying to develop, to find out if there were really enough silver there to really develop a good road and build into that. Because at that time, this was just national forest. You were allowed to claim mining claims in there. So at any rate, every day there'd be a helicopter flyover. They'd haul plywood and lumber and all kinds of stuff. They even flew in a little D2 Caterpillar in pieces and then put it together up there. And that little Caterpillar is sitting against a spruce tree right now on top of Bugle Mountain. It's got a tin can over the muffler, which is probably pretty well rotted out. It was pretty well bad when I saw it. And the cat itself is all rust, but you can tell what it was. And it's sitting up against the blade is against a spruce tree, and it's under a spruce tree there a little bit. But at any rate, I got a chance to roam around when I was at Alpine Park, waiting for the horses to come down from camp and try to get out. So I had a little time usually, and I'd ride around, check all the places where the horses might be or might want to go. And one day I rode over on towards Bugle Mountain and up behind Alpine Park, and I was on the west side of Bugle Mountain. A little rocky up in there. I went up a ways. I thought, well, the horses aren't going to go up in here very far. There's not much grass, and now we're running out of grass. But I noticed a blaze on a tree. Everybody knows that the Forest Service has a blaze that is registered in the Library of Congress, and nobody but Forest Service officials or employees can use it. And it's an upside-down exclamation mark. And it has a dot on the top and a big slash on the bottom, and that's original and a real Forest Service blaze. Anyway, I was riding up in there, and all of a sudden I see these two blazes, but they were just 3 dots. Somebody had just taken a notch, 3 dots on a tree. And I looked around, and by God, I saw another one up the hill a little ways further. I kept following them for about half a mile up there, and finally I got up there pretty high up on the mountain, and I ended up on a small flat spot, and I thought, geez, this is kind of unusual. But I looked around, and there was a broken skillet laying there, and a coffee pot that was all rusted out, and a few tin cans here and there. And I looked at the ground, and it was all a different color. And it was a tailings out of a mine. And I thought, where in the heck is mine? I looked all around, got off my horse, tied him up, looked all around. Finally, I saw a bush over against the mountain. And back of that bush, there was the entrance to a mine. So I got out my axe and cut that bush out of the way so I could see it a little bit better. And I looked in there, geez, the mine was only about 3 feet high because it had filled in that much. And then about 6 feet wide. So it was pretty small. But I looked back in there as far as I could, and I crawled in there a little ways, but couldn't see anything. So I went back to my saddlebag, got out my flashlight, and of course I turned it off, and I put it in my mouth so I could crawl in because I couldn't stand up in there. So I crawled into this mountain, into this mine, and it's an adit, that's what they call them. It's a sloping mine that goes straight into the mountain instead of a shaft which goes straight down. But anyway, I crawled in there, and I crawled in quite a ways till I couldn't even see the entrance anymore, couldn't see light from the other end. And I thought, well, it's time to turn on the light. So I reached up here, and you twist that little bulb around, and the light came on. Oh, was I ever scared. There were daddy long legs everywhere. I was laying on them, in them. They were hanging from the roof, 2 and 3 in a bunch, and they were all over my arms, all over. They were all over, everywhere. Have you ever tried to back up on crawling? Crawl backwards, somebody. I want to see somebody crawl backwards. I wished I'd had a picture because I was really crawling backwards as fast as I could. And I got out, and of course I got all the daddy long legs off of me, as many as I could, and looked around a little bit more. And that old mine is something that I remember have remembered a long time. And I haven't really told that story to too many. I didn't have any wranglers with me because I was just watching the horses. I was a wrangler. I wasn't an outfitter. And the Bear Creek, or the Bear Creek Mining Company actually explored for silver up there and copper on top of the mine, on top of Bugle Mountain, and finally gave up. About in 2 years they gave up. And the reason they come out of Lincoln is that that's the only place they could land a helicopter and have fuel to fly in. And they were using a little Bell, by the way, which couldn't haul hardly anything. I mean, four pieces of plywood was a load. And I don't know how they got that Caterpillar in there. I know they took it all apart because I found some of the wrenches were laying there yet, and where they had tried to put or had put it together. But anyway, that's one of the stories that I'd like to relate to you, because mining was a big thing at the edge of the Bob Marshall, not in the Bob Marshall, mainly because it's mostly limestone. No gold in limestone. If you can find gold in limestone, boy, we'd all be rich because there's a lot of limestone in Montana. But at any rate, that's one of the stories I wanted to tell you. And you know, when I started into business in 1964, clients were a little short, and you know, you had to do what you could. And so I would work for other outfitters at that time, and I want to check my notes here, make sure I'm telling the right one. And I got a whole lot of notes, you see. There aren't very many notes there. Yeah. And this is a story. I was looking for clients, anywhere I could get a client, you know, somebody that we wanted to go into the backcountry. Matter of fact, I took quite a few in free, all right, which was great for me. And some of my first wranglers, by the way, were kind of unusual wranglers for most people to understand, in the fact that they were all professors at the university. Because what they would do is teach until June, and then all summer off, and most of them couldn't afford to travel to Hawaii or anywhere else, and they loved the backcountry. So I had Dr. Les Pengelly as one of my wranglers, Dr. Arnold Boley as another wrangler, and let's see, the last one was Dr. George Weisel. Thank you. and he was an ichthyologist, a professor at the university, and also taught comparative anatomy. So I had really good wranglers, but I don't think they paid any attention to what I told them to do, but we got the job done. They were good wranglers that way. But anyway, I ended up joining a little group called the Institute of the Rockies. And it's a long defunct organization. What they did is they would take issues and try to call a conference and try to represent both sides, you know. And one of them was the fish in the Columbia River. You remember the business there? There was a big deal on the fish. But at any rate, they did that for a long time, and they were a nonprofit, and they did own a little house up in one of the creeks out of just west of town. But at any rate, I hooked up with them, and I was there. And one of the guys from the Institute had gotten a contact from a guy by the name of Gary Cook, who was an English teacher in Japan. And what Gary wanted to do, him and Yaska, his wife, they wanted to bring Japanese kids, young people that were in senior in high school or in college, or even graduated out of college. They wanted to bring them to the West and understand our slang, you know? You know what I'm talking about, see? But anyway, they wanted to try to understand our language and our slang in particular. So the Institute decided, well, they were a nonprofit, so Gary managed to get a deal going with them, and him and Yaska brought 10 Japanese students, and we wanted to take them on a 4-day trip into the Bob Marshall. So I said, you bet, that's money anyway. I can take somebody in. And I had already set up my hunting camp on top of Camp Pass. So I was all ready to go there, and I had a place to take them. So I went up about 2 hours early to the Montour Ranger Station, got my horses all ready, saddled them all up with those kind of saddles and this kind of saddle, and I want to watch my time. You signal me when you fall asleep, I want to know. But at any rate, I got up there a couple hours early, saddled up everything, and in comes my daughter, Tammy, driving a car, and another car following her. And here's 10 Japanese students get out, all girls. And Yaska was the only interpreter. And the first thing they did was talk a whole lot, which I didn't understand a single word. It sounded like a bunch of chickens squawking over there. But at any rate, I didn't understand any of it. So finally, I kind of gathered the herd together there a little bit, and I tried to explain what we're going to do. We're going to ride these horses, and they all looked at them with big eyes, and get you on a saddle like this, put your feet in those stirrups, and we're going to have you ride into camp on a horseback. And we're going into kind of a wilderness area where we're going. So they didn't understand any of that. They just talking a lot. So anyway, that went on for a little bit. I first grabbed a hold of the first young lady and led her over to a horse called the Curly, and got her stirrups all adjusted to the right length and helped her get on and stirrups. She didn't know what a stirrup was. I said, put your foot in the stirrup. She didn't know anything. See, so I had to go to the next thing. I said, well, now I showed her how to put her foot in the stirrup. So we got her on into the saddle. And then I handed her the reins. What's reins? Is that rein that comes down, or what is that? You know, and I said, well, that's a steering wheel of the horse. And anyway, I said, now you just wait here and I'll get the rest of them. So by the time I got all 10 of them, Tammy was helping me at that time, and another wrangler of mine, Robin Fowle, he was there helping me. And we finally got them all in the saddles. And I looked around, and my golly, they were scattered out over about 2 acres, because they just let the horses do whatever the horse wanted to do. You know, if the horse wanted more grass, he went and got it. So that was a big mess. I mean, so to start the trip out, the wranglers, Robin and Tammy, they got the stuff together all real quick. We didn't have to take any tents or anything like that, kitchen gear. We just had to take our duffel, and we packed that all up, and Robin packed that up and got it on horses ready to go into the hills. And Tammy and I got on our horses, and we actually rounded up our guests. You know, we went out, shoot, get over there, get over here, come on, move over there. And anyway, we finally got them in a line of some sort so that they would follow, and of course they were dropping reins left and right. We tied them all together then and tied them so the reins were all tied to the horns. And fortunately, Curly was one of our favorite old horses. Some of these guys will remember him, and I'm sure Lisa does. Anyway, we started up the trail, and that old horse would follow me. Of course, all the rest of them would too. And up the trail we went. And of course, Gibber, boy, they were talking all the time. There was no way, and I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And I'd stop at one place, and I'd point up the creek and try to tell them that that meadow up there, we've shot several elk there, and that was a good elk hunting area. They didn't understand any of that at all. And anyway, we arrived at camp. Got them all off the saddle, finally, because we had to keep them rounded up. Somebody had to go out and keep them pushed in towards camp so I could get them off the saddles. Anyway, we finally got all that done and had supper that night. And boy, they yak, boy, hard on my ears for a long time. But at any rate, we finally had supper and went to bed. And as soon as I said, now we're going to go to bed, I turned out the lantern. And when I turned out the lantern, the gibbering really started. Now, I mean, they started talking a lot of Japanese that I couldn't understand. Yak. I thought they were going to go all night. But we did finally get them quieted down. And in the morning, I thought, well, I'm going to fix these kids. I'm going to teach them something. So the first thing I did, I got up at about 4 o'clock, and it was still dark, you know, and built breakfast on our cook stove in there, and right away, yak. I could hear them in there, what's going on? Some of them wouldn't get up, you know, and finally I got everybody up, and we were out of the tent at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, still dark. I got them all out, and we got them, Tammy and I got them in a line, straight line. You follow me, see? So I started to hike up to the Camp Pass, which is only about a quarter of a mile or a little bit better maybe, up a hill, because it's a great sight up there. But anyway, I put Tammy at the end, so if any of them dropped out and went somewhere else, we could keep track of them. But anyway, we started up the hill and walking, and I said, "Shh, be quiet now. We might see elk, you know, shh." No, no way. They were yak, 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 yak. No way. Finally, we get up to the top, and it's still dark, but starting to see a little light over in the east, you know. And I spread them out a little bit and sat them down. I said, now sit right here and be real quiet. And they finally got that notion down, and they all sat there until the sun started up over the hill. And that's exactly what I wanted to show them. Here the sun came up, and they could see up the North Fork, you could see all the way out through the country there. And they were sitting there, and all of a sudden, you could hear them all gibbering some more. And then all of a sudden, boy, they really started talking, you know. And anyway, that went very good. And then I said, okay, now. And I grabbed each one of them, and I took one of them at a time down to a place by a stump. I set one there, and then a rock pile over here, and over on the edge of the meadow right here, and several other places until I had all 10 of them sitting out by themselves. And the interpreter, she tried to explain to them that they were supposed to keep quiet and just see what they could see and hear what they could hear. Anyway, they sat there for about, I had them there for about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And I thought, boy, some of them are going to drift off. I don't know where they'll be. So anyway, I went back out and rounded them all up, brought them in. And at almost every place I stopped and picked up a student, they had already scratched something on a rock or had put a Japanese signal signing that was their name in the dirt with their finger. And one of them had even taken a little pocket knife and was carving his name in a little stick of wood there. And I got them all back to camp finally, sat them all down again, and Yasko and I tried to explain to them, and Tammy, tried to explain to them that we wanted them to appreciate this wide open spaces. And I told them they could see all the way to Glacier Park from the top there, and you can. And you can see most of the Bob Marshall from the top of Camp Pass. But at any rate, I got them all, and I finally said, okay, I see all of you people, you want to make sure everybody knows or has known that you've been here. It's just like when you go into some of the restrooms. Kilroy was here, you know. Well, they all wanted to do that. And so I grabbed a hold of them again, and Yasko and I and Tammy, we tried to explain to them, look, we want you to go, I'm going to take you all back out those places, by the rock, by the stump, and all around. And I want you to just sit there and listen and see what's happening, but I want you to pick up something there. Not very big, a stick, a rock, whatever you think you'd like. Because they were all going to take the whole mountain home with them, you know. They were going to try to get it all in their bags. But anyway, they all did that, and they came back to the circle again. We sat there and talked a little bit. And I said, now, I want you guys, everybody, all these students, all you young ladies, I want you to go back and put that right where you found it, in exactly the same place it was. And some of them was a stick, pine cones, and they had about everything you could think of. And a lot of little rocks, flat rocks from the top of the mountain. But anyway, I said, now, feel it real well. Feel that rock, feel that stick real well. Now I want you to take it right back and put it exactly where it is. And I said, I'm going to come around and make sure you put it right where it laid before. And they did that. And I gathered them all back. Finally, they did it. It took a little bit of convincing. But they finally did that. And they said, well, what are you doing? And I said, now, you have something that will always be in Montana on the top of Camp Pass. And that's one of the things I tried to teach with a lot of my guests. I try to interpret the country to what they were seeing and what they were doing riding a horse into the backcountry. And when we took that group out, they recognized that. In fact, one of them came here to school. What was her name, Tammy?
Mika.
Mika. I don't know if Mika might even be here.
She's a disability specialist here at the university.
She's working here at the university right now. But anyway, several of them came back to Montana, and some of them I think wanted to go back because they were on Camp Pass, and that was the important thing. And they saw wilderness in their own eyes and they're going to be present in that wilderness forever, for a lifetime, forever, forever. For perpetuity, that's what the wilderness bill says. But at any rate, that's one of the stories I wanted to tell you. And I think those, these foreigners didn't have a clue what it was, what wilderness was, and what the trees and all the horses. At the end of the trip, it was kind of interesting. Quite a few of those young ladies who had never been on a horse, never even touched a horse, but they'd go over and give their horse a big hug before they left. I know I remember that very well. Another little story I want to add here, and I need to, this is kind of an important thing. You know, we ran about, when we were in full business in the 80s and 90s, when we had lots of clientele, you see, I never advertised anywhere, and it was all word of mouth. And the better job we did with our guests, the more guests we got. And I was lucky enough to get the Grizzly Riders from the University of Montana, a foundation group, which was all high executives, and they all sent all of their people here. I had several groups of Boeing people, just all engineers out of the Boeing company, and several people out of Denver who were musicians. Walt Schraw, he was a musician down there, and he sent a whole series of people that played all kinds of instruments. But at any rate, that's what we did. And as we got bigger, we wanted to take these guests in the hills. So we decided we'd make 2 trips and overlap them. And some years we would run up to 16 8-day trips in the summer. Now, figure that out. You think you can get 16 8-day trips from June till about the middle of September? Not very well. But the way we did it is that, fortunately, I had my wife. By the way, you cannot be an outfitter. Anybody here that's planning to be an outfitter, you can't be an outfitter unless you have a good partner to work with, mainly a wife. You see? And that's actually a real first thing that you have to do. And so at any rate, Thelma and I got together and we thought, well, here's what we're going to do. I'll take a party of 8 or 10, and I'll go in the hills. And I'll meet you at Limestone Meadows at the upper end of the Danaher. And I'll have you bring in another group of guests, and 6, 8, 10, whatever we had, and with 2 wranglers, her and 2 other wranglers, and I'll meet you there on such and such a day. Anyway, she'd come in 2 days. She'd come up the North Fork of the Blackfoot, camp at Cabin Creek, and then the next day end up at Limestone. You know, that's a big meadow, by the way, that I had lots of grazing for horses. And by that time, I had already gone down the White River and all that, Chinese Wall, and came back up through the Basin Creek, and I ended up in the same meadow at the other end. And we would exchange guests. But that night was the best nights I think we've ever had that I can remember, because there we had both groups of guests exchanging ideas, and the first group, they didn't have a clue what they're headed for, and the other group had been there, and boy, waiting to see this, waiting to see the fish, you know, not quite that long, but pretty big. But anyway, they couldn't wait, and Thelma would bring them in 2 days, we'd camp together one night, the next day, she'd take my group of 10, and she'd head back to Cabin Creek and on out to the North Fork, and then she'd go home, and then she would get busy and prepare the next group and get all my food ready and her food for the 2 days that she was going to bring the next group in. So then I'd take them for 4 days in the backcountry, show them the Chinese Wall, show them the big fish if I could, and show them all the country, try to interpret things as I see, some of the old airplane wrecks and that kind of thing. Fact is, it was a Ford Tri-Motor at Big Prairie. We always went over and talked about it. Dick Johnson wrecked it there. But at any rate, then she would meet me again. Sometimes it'd be over at Jumbo Creek, on Young's Creek. And she'd come in 2 days and stay there at Jumbo Creek, and I'd arrive there that same day, and we'd exchange guests again, and she'd go back out. So she got to ride about 60 or 70 miles real quick every trip. And a lot of times I wasn't riding near that far, but I had another group of guests. She'd bring in clean clothes, and the only bath I got was in the river. But I'd have clean clothes, and she'd bring in all new fresh food and lettuce and so forth that we had in for our dining. And we did that for about 4, 5, 6 years, didn't we? I think so. And she would pack up all the groceries for me and her and bring in another group. So that was pretty handy. So that's why, hold up your hand, Thelma. I want to make sure they see who you are.
I've never been on a horse until I met this guy. I was terrified of him. So I came a long way.
She came a long way, and she had some really good horses. The first one was Curly. Babe was another one that she rode. And then Pat, black and white Pinot we had. And then she finally rode a little horse called Lightning. And he was a little shorter, but he was a smart little guy and hard to catch. I mean, we could not catch him. We'd only have to wait until the last horse to catch. Just catch everything else, time up, and then he'd come in and we'd catch him. But anyway, she rode that little horse, and that horse would go down the trail. Thelma could fall asleep or whatever she wanted to do, and that horse would stop at the next camphouse, and he'd swing over to a rock or a log that she could get off on easily and stop there and do that. Fact is, I had Deloitte Wolf. Some of you may know him here in town. He was an author dentist. And anyway, he would lead some of my parties. And boy, he had a fast horse, and he wanted to go and go and go. And some of the guests all said, well, heck, we want to trot a little bit, gallop. And so he'd take them. And one time, I remember she said, oh, well, Deloitte, if you want to take him, go on down the trail. You know where our camp's going to, where the end of the road is, where the trailhead is. And lo and behold, he went right down, right by on into it. We had to go round him up and find him because he got away. So with some of the guests. But at any rate, you can't outfit at all. There's no way you can do it without a good partner and a wife that'll work with you. And she wrote all the letters, by the way, and we handwritten a lot of the letters. I wrote some of them. But that's how we communicated with our guests. And she would book them and then send them. About every month to 6 weeks, we'd send them some information, like the map of where we're going to go, like that was on here a while ago. And she would, or she'd send them equipment list, what to bring, so that they didn't bring the kitchen sink and everything that went with it, you know. Sometimes they'd try that. And then we'd end up with a whole mess of stuff in there. So that's another story that I think you should hear. Yes?
I think we're almost done.
All right, we're just about done. I'm going to tell you, let me see if I can find the shortest one. Yeah, one of the shorter ones. One of the shorter ones I had. You know, we didn't have a TV set in our house for quite a while, but finally in about the mid-'70s, we got a TV set. And I saw a program in there called The Dating Game. So I called the Travel Montana headquarters over in Helena, which is the advertising end of the tourism in Montana. And I said, do you ever give away a trip, like a pack trip into the hills? And she said, why, we'd love to do that. That'd be great. So for about 3 years, we handled the dating game. I'd take 2 young people, have to really watch them all night and all day. But anyway, we'd take these 2 young people and take them into the hills and set their camps up so that so I could keep track. I spent lots of sleepless nights there. But some of them actually got married and lived a long life as husband and wife. You know, I could go on forever and tell you stories. I can remember when my wranglers brought in some supplies for me, and they had hid some beer in their packs. And then they said, oh, we want to get down here and watch the horses. So they went down there and watched the horses and drank beer. I know what they were doing. But at any rate, I want to thank you, everybody, and you're the people that make this successful. Remember the Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship Act? We need to get that passed yet. We, and I think it's real important that we do that. And remember, everyone here in Montana, we're kind of used to the word wilderness. Boy, and almost nobody else is. And we need to get that so that they understand what it is. And you know, I had a person once ask me, his name was Stuart, and he said, "Can you tell me, Smoke, what the value of wilderness is?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I can. The value of wilderness, let's see, it isn't the coal, it isn't the gold, it isn't the silver, it isn't the oil, and it's probably not the timber. It's the sanity of mind, of your mind." And that's what we take people in for, to get the sanity so they can get their mind back to where it should be, where they're starting to think about things that they're doing. So the sanity of mankind is the product of wilderness. And if you've ever been in the wilderness, take time, sit by yourself, just listen. The hush of the land will come to you, I'm sure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I jump up, but I can't jump anymore. Thank you. And I guess what we're going to have book signing over here, yeah.
And Julie wanted to take a picture, right?
Julie, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you want it? I don't even know. I'm not good at selfies. I'm so bad at selfies. Can you turn around? Get there.
Do I have to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But thank you, everybody, for coming. And, you know, I've got people here that we took the packing class with a guy by the name of Steve Ford, and his dad was the president of the United States when we took the course. And there he is, Tom Powers.
Yeah. So if you have a moment, if you want to get your book signed, we will be sitting over here. There's also a guest book for anybody who would like to sign in the guest book. And there's coffee and hot chocolate and cookies outside. So please
yeah,
and
help yourself.
mingle. There's no need to leave right away. So, and thank you, Stella.